This is a book that we'll look at, some excerpts from this book that gives you a good history of many things pertaining to what we're talking about here. It says, as philosopher Soren Kierkegaard once put it, quote, "Life is lived forwards, but understood backwards. Without understanding the mistakes of the past, we are doomed to a flawed future." All right? Let's go to Ecclesiastes, please, 3 and 15. Read that for me, please.
That which hath been is now, and that which is to be hath already been. And God requires that which is past.
God requires that which is past. So we have to return back to our past, not the whole system that is set up. All trees have roots. We got to go back and check the origin of things, learn the history and the origin of things. What you see over here on the side is a picture from an old book with the seal of the Vatican to the top. And if you look to the top, you'll see there a double-headed eagle, the symbol of Rome. The power of Rome was always the eagle. Okay? This is a symbol that enslaved our people. And over here is a cathedral, a chapel. This is a chapel right here, a small chapel with idols. This woman is going to pray. And right below it is a wolf with two children drinking the milk. Did you hear what I said? Drinking the milk from the breast of the wolf. This is a close-up of it. These two children are called Romulus, I think it is. Remus and Romulus, the founders of Rome. What is interesting is that this is what you call a folklore behind the foundation, the founding of Rome. Why is the Vatican using this symbol to connect itself to it? And why are those children drinking from this milk of a wolf? There's a message behind this. Let me read something here to the top. We are taught to obey our denomination or movement and never to challenge what it teaches. If the truth be told, we Christians never seem to ask why we do what we do. Instead, we blindly carry out our religious traditions without asking where they came from. And that's very sad. Next slide. Now, this booklet is an ancient manuscript, and if you look to the top, you'll see the price that it was sold for and put in a private collection. You see the price up there? How much is that? For a manuscript. Do you see? All right. Look at the close-up here. Double-headed eagle. Rome, the papal Rome. Roma is in Latin. The woman is praying in a chapel. And this is a grove. Grove. See? And you see the wolf and the two children all tied together. Romulus and Remus are the twin brothers and central characters of Rome's foundation myth. Notice the double-headed eagle, papal symbols, as we said before. Next slide. As you read through the following pages, you may be surprised to discover that a great deal of what we Christians do for Sunday morning church did not come from Jesus Christ, the apostles, or the scriptures. Nor did it come from Judaism. After the Romans destroyed Jerusalem in 70 AD, Judeo Christianity, that's the Israelites following the Messiah, waned in numbers and power. Gentile Christianity dominated. That's the Roman system. And the new faith began to absorb Greco-Roman philosophy and ritual. Strikingly, much of what we do for church was what? Lifted directly out of pagan culture in the post-apostolic period, So after the apostles had died, you know who took over, the wolf. Mark 7 and 7, let's see what it says.
Howbeit in vain do they worship me, teaching for doctrine the commandments of men.
So there are people following, so, they say, well, we pray to the Most High, but in vain they worship Him, because the practices that they practice are the precepts of men. In the late 2nd century, there was also a shift in how the Lord's Supper was viewed. The Lord's Supper had devolved from a full meal, what does it say? A full meal to a stylized ceremony called Holy Communion. I'm just giving you little bits and pieces. It's a lot of reading here. And all the references, the footnotes are right below it. Okay? Luke 22 and 20.
Likewise also the cup after supper, saying,
Likewise also he took the cup after what?
Supper.
Supper. So they sat down and they had a full meal. But what you find in churches, they don't practice that. They give you a little something like this, a little bread wafer. This is a sun object, shaped as, like a sun, because you're worshiping the sun. Although surrounded by Jewish synagogues and pagan temples, the early Christians were the only religious people on earth who did not erect sacred buildings for their worship. That's talking about the apostles. They didn't have buildings at that time. The Christian faith was born where? In homes, in courtyards and along roadsides. So the early church was in houses, brothers and sisters. Not in these big grand cathedrals that we see. For the first 3 centuries, the Christians did not have any special buildings. As one scholar put it, the Christianity that conquered the Roman Empire was essentially a home-centered movement. The people, not the building, was called the congregation. Let's go to Ephesians 2. Ephesians chapter 2, 20 to 22.
And are built upon the foundation of the apostles and prophets.
It's built upon the foundations of who?
The apostles and prophets.
Jesus
Christ himself being the chief cornerstone.
Yeshua HaMashiach, the chief cornerstone.
In whom all the building fitly framed together groweth unto a holy temple in the Lord.
Verse 22.
In whom ye also are builded together.
In whom you people are built together. Not a building, but the people is the focus. The people.
For habitation of God through the Spirit.
In whom you are built together for a habitation of who? God. He's the one that's going to inhabit us. Not the building, but us. Alright, let's move on. Next slide. Constantine, the great father of the church building. This is a bust of Constantine. While the Emperor Constantine, around 285 to 337, is often lauded for granting Christians freedom of worship and expanding their privileges, his story fills a dark page in the history of Christianity. Church buildings began with him. The story is astonishing. Church buildings began with this man. In 312 AD, Constantine became the Caesar, or the emperor, of the Western Empire. By 324, he became emperor of the entire Roman Empire. Shortly afterward, he began ordering the construction of church buildings. He did so to promote the popularity and acceptance of Christianity. It says Constantine's thinking was dominated by superstition and pagan magic. Even after he became emperor, he allowed the old pagan institutions to remain as they were. Following his conversion to Christianity, so-called conversion, Constantine never abandoned sun worship. He kept the sun on his coins, and he set up a statue of the sun god that bore his own image in the form of Constantinople, his new capital. Constantinople, excuse me. Constantine also built a statue of the mother goddess Sybil. Alright, let's go to the next slide. The fact that he is reported to have had his eldest son, his nephew, and his brother-in-law executed does not strengthen the case of his conversion. So he killed his own family member while under the name of Christianity, being a Christian. In AD 321, Constantine decreed that Sunday would be a day of rest, a legal holiday. It appears that Constantine's intention in doing this was to honor the god Mithras, the unconquered sun. He described Sunday as the day of the sun. That's why we still have that term used today. Further demonstrating Constantine's affinity with sun worship, excavations of St. Peter's. Remember I showed you the statue of St. Peter? On top of his head is a solar disk, the sun. In Rome, uncovered a mosaic of Christ as the unconquered sun. Almost to his dying day, Constantine, quote, still functioned as the high priest of paganism. In fact, he retained the pagan title Pontifex Maximus, or Pope, which means chief of pagan priests. In the 15th century, this same title became honorific, when Constantine dedicated Constantinople as his new capital on May 11, 330, he adorned it with treasures taken from heathen temples. And he used pagan magic formulas to do what? Protect crops and heal diseases. This is one of his coins. Pontifex Maximus. There you go. Let's look at Deuteronomy 23 and 18.
Thou shalt not bring the hire of a whore or the price of a dog into the house of the Lord thy God.
What does that mean? Don't bring the hire of a whore, the price of a dog, where? Into the house of the Lord. What does that mean? What does that mean? It means simply what? Don't bring unclean things into the house of the Lord. The things that was ordained that is against God's word. We know very well that whoredom is an abomination to the Most High. It's breaking his commandments, right? So why take the money that you made from prostitution and throw it in an offering plate? Let's put it that way. Or bring anything that was serviced for the demons out there and bring it into the house of God. Alright? So that's what it's saying here. But what did Constantine do? He brought in many other treasures taken from heathen temples, and he brought it into the place that he created called church. That's the history. Constantine also borrowed from pagans, not the Jews, the notion of sacredness of objects and places. After his death, he declared to be divine. This was the custom of all pagan emperors who died before him. It was the Senate who declared him. Read it again. It was the who?
Senate.
The Senate. What form of government do we have? We got senators. That's why we're still under the Roman Empire, brothers and sisters. Who declared him to be pagan god at his death. At his death. Now his mother, Helena, this woman was most noted for her obsession with relics. In AD 326, Helena made a pilgrimage to Palestine. In AD 327 in Jerusalem, she reportedly found the cross and nails that were used to crucify Jesus. It is reported that Constantine promoted the idea that the bits of wood that came from Christ's cross possess spiritual powers. That's why you find these pastors having these things for sale. Different things that they're selling. Crosses. And he got power. He's going to pray over his cloth and give it to you, and all kind of different things. This is where they get that from. This is a shrine of Constantine's mom, his mother. She's deified as a goddess. All right?
She's supposed to be the Mary.
She's called Saint Helena. When you read the history, you'll see how the mothers seduced the sons to do some craziness in Israel. All right, these wicked mothers. When you have some time, you can go back to 1 Kings 14 and read the rest of it, and you'll see, get everything in context. But right now, I'm just kind of going through some real quick points. So this king now did what was right. Let's see what happened.
And he took away the Sodomites out of the land.
He took the Sodomites out of the land because many of these kings allowed the Sodomites to come in the land. Go ahead.
And removed all the idols that his father had made.
He removed the idols his father made.
And also Matah, his mother.
He also removed his mother.
Even her he removed from being queen.
Why did he remove her from being queen?
Because she had made an idol in a grove.
In the grove she made an idol.
And Asa destroyed her idol and burned it by the brook Kidron.
So we can see the history of destroying the wickedness out of Israel. But you can see with Constantine how Constantine and his mother got together and set up this whole wicked religion called Christianity. They were the ones involved. And history has it that the story of Nimrod, when you read behind the scenes with history, Nimrod's mother was the influencing power behind the man Nimrod, who set up the first one world system of worship. Her name was called Semiramis. Okay? Alright. And legend has it, I'm not sure, I didn't confirm it, that these two had relations with each other like husband and wife. Same thing with Nimrod. Nimrod did the same thing with his mother. He was married to his mother and he got killed for that. Okay? Alright, let's go to the next slide. Let's go to the next slide. Let's look at graveyards. You ever wonder, remember the question was asked, why certain things are the way it's set up? How come there's graveyards by the churches? How come you pass a church, you see a graveyard? Isn't that kind of odd when you see those things? Let's see what it says here. Graveyards were usually established at the same time as what?
The building.
So it wasn't like after somebody died, you put it. You had it part of the planning to put a graveyard. Of the relevant place of worship, which can date back to the 8th and 14th centuries. That means that the disciples didn't practice that. Alright, these are later things. And were often used by those families who could not afford to be buried inside or beneath the place of worship itself. The place of worship is supposed to be set apart, consecrated unto the Most High.
Amen.
The dead defiles the place of worship.
Amen.
But these people set up a system where the dead can be beneath the place of worship itself. That means to say, when you go to some of these churches, these old churches, you don't even know what's below you when you have in service. In most cultures, those who were vastly rich had important professions, were part of the nobility or were of any other high social status, were usually buried in individual crypts inside or beneath the relevant place of worship, with an indication of the name of the deceased, date of death, and other biographical data. In Europe, this was often accompanied with a depiction of the family coat of arms. And you can look that up in Wikipedia. Next slide. Leviticus 21, 1 to 2. Get that and get Isaiah 65, 3 to 5. The word graveyard. Let's look at the Old English term. Graveyard from Old English means graf, or pit, or yarden, which means garden. An open place. Garden. Garden. Keep that word in mind. And this is the dictionary I'm going to try to grab. Garden, an open place. So graveyard is called a garden, basically a garden for the dead. Now let's take a look. Constantine's building program. Following Helena's trip to Jerusalem in AD 327, Constantine began erecting the first church buildings throughout the Roman Empire, some at public expense. Interestingly, he named his church buildings after saints, just as the pagans named their temples after gods. Constantine built his first church buildings upon the cemeteries where the Christians held meals for the dead saints. Let me read it again. Constantine built his first church buildings upon the cemeteries where the Christians held meals for the dead saints. That is, he built them over the bodies of the dead saints. Why? Because for at least a century beforehand, the burial places of the saints were considered holy spaces. Leviticus 21, 1 and 2.
And the Lord said unto Moses, Speak unto the priests, the son of Aaron, and say unto them.
Now the priests are supposed to be the ones operating the church business. Go ahead and read.
There shall none be defiled for the dead among his people.
So how can you not be defiled if you got dead bodies right in a place that's supposed to be holy? Go ahead.
But for his kin that is near unto him, that is for his mother and for his father, and for his son and for his daughter, and for his brother.
Well, this is certainly not the graveyards of all the priests. Is that it? All right, let's go to Isaiah 65. Isaiah 65. So when you look around and you see these things, brothers and sisters, there's a long history behind these things. But we don't ask because we simply don't know. We go along because we believe that these men are holy men. But we can see, and that's why people will get angry with these kind of teachings, because it makes them uncomfortable. Isaiah 65, 3 to 5. Go ahead and read.
A people that provoketh me to anger continually to my face, that sacrifice in gardens.
Where did they sacrifice?
In gardens.
Where did they sacrifice?
In graveyards.
In the graveyard. Go ahead and read.
And burneth incense upon altars of brick,
Which
remain among the graves.
Graves and gardens. Graves and gardens. Go ahead.
And lodge in the monuments which eat swine's flesh.
Wait a minute. It says Christians held meals. What kind of meals? Read that again.
Eat swine's flesh.
They eat the swine flesh.
And broth of abominable things.
And they have their soup and their broth or whatever it is. Go ahead.
In their vessels.
In their vessels, in the gardens, or in the graveyards. You see the Bible talks about that. It's right in the Word. You want to say something?
Yeah, because mostly in England, especially for lunch, they go in the graveyard.
That's right. For lunch, they go in the graveyard and have a picnic, basically. Go ahead and read.
Which say, stand by thyself, come not near to me, for I am holier than thou.
So they say, oh, we're holy, we're doing a good thing, righteous thing.
These are a smoke in my nose.
So these people perform these wicked witchcraft ceremonies, and they come before God and says, we are holy. But God says, this is what?
A smoke in my nose.
It's burning his nose.
A fire that burneth all day.
He hates it. You see that? But this is what we go to. Church. All this foolishness. It's an abomination to the Most High. Next slide. Exploring the first church buildings. Constantine even decorated new church buildings with pagan art. He also favored it because of his fascination with sun worship. Basilicas were designed so that the sun fell upon the speaker as he faced the congregation. Like the temples of the Greeks and Romans, the Christian basilicas were built as a facade front facing east. So you can see, that's why when you go to churches, you see a sun symbol that will cast the light down on the person speaking to present themselves as if they are gods. And look at all the pagan art that you find in churches. Everything was designed for a reason. A reason, brothers and sisters. That's why we've got to be very careful and understand this truth. Let's go to the next slide. Sun images. Deuteronomy 17, 2-4. Ezekiel 8, 6 and 16. This is a picture of the pagan sun worship, Babylon. Being deified, and people worshiping the sun. Okay? And as you can see over here, in this so-called chapel, right in the back, you find the sun symbol, but it's shaped like a womb, like the opening of a uterus. You see that? That's the symbol of the mother and the son, Mary and the sun worship. Okay, as you can see over here too, the mother and the son, with the symbols of the sons around their head as raised. Sun images, Deuteronomy. Let's go there real quick. Deuteronomy
17, verse 2-4. If there be found among you, within any of the gates which the Lord thy God giveth thee, man or woman that hath wrought wickedness in the sight of the Lord thy God, in transgressing his covenant, and hath gone and served other gods, and worshipped them, either the sun or moon.
You go and serve other gods. No matter if you're a man or male or female, sun and moon, go ahead.
Or any of the host of heaven, which I have not commanded.
God did not command this foolishness that you see on the screen. Go ahead.
And it be told thee that thou hast heard of it, and inquired diligently, and behold, it be true, and the thing certain, that such abomination is wrought in Israel.
So you see, God gives us instructions to check things out and make sure it's correct, so you won't be transgressing against him. Verse 5, read verse 5.
Then shalt thou bring forth that man or that woman which hath committed that wicked thing unto thy gates, even that man or that woman, and shalt stone them with stones till they die.
Boy, I tell you, if we was in Israel right now, there'll be a lot of dead people. I'll probably be one of them with the stones too. A lot of heads will be busted. Let's go to Ezekiel 8, verse 6. A lot of busted heads. Ezekiel 8 and 6.
Ezekiel chapter 8, verses 6 and 16.
Ezekiel
He
8.
said, furthermore unto me, Son of man.
So God is speaking to Ezekiel to reveal certain crimes that were committed in Israel.
Seest thou what thou do? Even the great abominations that the house of Israel committed here, that I should go far off from my sanctuary.
So Israel is doing some wicked things that God says, I got to leave the sanctuary. I can't stick around here. It's just too much for me to deal with. He says that I should depart far off from my sanctuary. Go ahead.
But turn thee yet again, and thou shalt see greater abominations.
Look one more time, you can see some greater abominations. Verse 16.
And he brought me into the inner court of the Lord's house.
Of whose house?
The Lord's house.
When they call the churches the Lord's house, read on.
And behold, at the door of the temple of the Lord.
Even in the door of the temple of the Lord.
Between the porch.
Between the porch and the altar.
Were about 25 men.
25 men, like Christmas, 25th day.
With their backs toward the temple of the Lord. And their faces towards the east.
Their faces toward the east. Where does the sun rise from?
The east.
The east. Why do we have early sunrise worship?
To worship the sun.
To worship the sun. Go ahead.
And they worship the sun toward the east.
They worship the sun towards the east. Next slide. This is the Pope, the current Pope. What does he have up in his hand? The sun. You can't tell me that these people are not worshiping the same abominations God says is abomination to him. Look at the altar. Look at these guys bowing at the lifting up of the sun. Do you see that?
Yeah.
Next slide. There goes a shrine with Mary, with the sun in the middle of her heart. and a Muslim symbol right below her, because Islam came out from the Vatican. And most people don't know that. That's a class by itself. There goes the cross. The cross of the so-called Jesus is smaller than the mother, because it's all about worshiping the wicked mother versus the son himself. Now, this is a picture. We can look at that later on if we have some time. You see this guy right here? That's Pastor Bryce of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, bowing before the Pope, bringing gifts to the Pope, Pope John Paul II. It's on YouTube. You can look at it. This guy is calling the Pope, Your Holiness. Adventist Church. Do you know that this current Pope, the one we looked at just a minute ago, go back, this Pope, his brother, is a Seventh-day Adventist minister?
What?
Let's go on. Back.
He's a Jesuit.
And they're all Jesuits.
Yes.
Go back, go forward. All right, let's take a look at some of these things. You can see Helena right above here. Remember Constantine had his mother erected?
Yeah.
If you go back, remember you see this picture with Constantine's mom?
Yeah.
That's her right up there. And she's hovering over the Pope's seat, the chair. Right? Look how these guys prostrate themselves before all this wickedness. In front of the altar stood the bishop's chair, which was called cathedra. The term ex cathedra is derived from this chair. Ex cathedra means from the throne. The bishop's chair, or the throne as it is called, was the biggest and most elaborate seat in the building. It replaced the seat of the judge in the Roman basilica, and it was surrounded by 2 rows of chairs reserved for the elders. The sermon was preached from the bishop's chair. That's why when you go to churches, you see a big old chair in the front, and you wonder, well, maybe you never ask yourself, but this is the history. They borrowed that from paganism. Let's go to the next slide. It was the custom of the Roman emperors to have lights carried before them whenever they appeared in public. The lights were accompanied by a basin of fire filled with aromatic spices. Taking his cue from this custom, Constantine introduced candles and burning of incense as part of the church service, and they were brought in when the clergy entered the room. All these features were borrowed from Greco-Roman culture and carried straight into the Christian church. 4th century Christianity was being profoundly shaped by Greek paganism and Roman imperialism. So we can see how everything was borrowed from the past. As one Catholic scholar wrote, with the coming of Constantine, various customs of ancient Roman culture flowed into the Christian liturgy. Even the ceremonies involved in the ancient worship of the emperor as deity or god found their way into the church worship only in secularized form. Next slide. Should these things ordained unto devils be utilized in the Lord's business? You got this man bowing down to this sun here, and he got incense in his hand. This is the current pope. He has his incense flashing back and forth to this black Mary and this black Jesus over here, which is the true colors of our people, because they know the truth. Let's go to 1 Corinthians 10.
1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 20 and 21. But I say that the things which the Gentiles sacrifice, they sacrifice to the devil.
I say the things which the Gentiles sacrifice, they sacrifice to devils. And to who?
And not to God.
So when they think that they're doing these things to God, they're sacrificing those things. They're doing things to demons. These church buildings are buildings erected for demons. Continue.
And I would not that they should have fellowship with devils.
We are not supposed to have fellowship with demons. All the churches came out from Mama Rome. And all of them are part of the same demonic system. Remember we showed from Greece, they're the ones who bring up this whole system, right? And then Rome took over from Greece. That's why it keeps mentioning Greco-Roman. They always connect them together because it hasn't been broken.
You cannot drink the cup of the Lord and the cup of devils.
We can't fellowship with the devils and God's business. Go ahead.
You cannot be partakers of the Lord's table and the table of the devil.
You see that? Lord's Supper is not scriptural. Passover is scriptural. Lord's Supper is not. It was borrowed from Constantine. He was the one who set it up. But the apostles will not tell you that because they're making too much money. And your lives is not important. But God looks at you as being important to him. 2 Kings 23.
And the king commanded Hilkiah the high priest, and the priests of the second order, and the keepers of the door, to bring forth out the temple of the Lord all the vessels that were made for Baal.
So the king was doing a good thing. He commanded the high priest, go into the houses of the Lord and take out the vessels. Because the people brought a bunch of pagan stuff into the temples of the Lord. You can't build a building that says this is for the Lord and bring in a bunch of foolishness up in there and say it's holy. We just read that in 1 Corinthians. Alright, continue.
And for the grove.
What?
And for the grove.
The graveyard stuff.
And for all the host of heaven.
The host of heavens are the sun, the moon, the stars that you see the popes and them worship. Go ahead.
And he burned them without Jerusalem.
He destroyed all of them. Are these guys destroying anything? Do you see him destroying anything? Or is he prostrating before him? Go ahead.
And they burned them without Jerusalem in the fields of Kidron.
Where did he take them?
The fields of Kidron.
He took them outside of Jerusalem, far away from the holy place, and burnt them out there. Go ahead.
And carried the ashes of them unto Bethel.
He took the ashes and he brought it to Bethel.
And he put down the idolatrous priests.
He did what?
He put down the idolatrous priests.
Idolatrous priests. This is idol worship. This is an idol. He put these knuckleheads, these bald heads down.
Whom the kings of Judah had ordained to burn incense.
The kings of Judah. Wasn't Constantine a king? Wasn't he practicing the same paganism? Go ahead.
In the place of the cities of Judah, and in the place round about Jerusalem, them also that burn incense unto Baal, to the sun, and to the moon, and to the planets, and to all the host of heaven.
Let me read that. He says, and those also who burn incense to Baal, this is what these guys are doing, to the sun, to the moon, and to the planets. These guys are burning these things to Baal.
And he brought out the grove from the house of the Lord, without Jerusalem, unto the brook Kidron, and burnt it at the brook Kidron.
Now, it says groves in the English translation, but it's actually Ashereth pole. Ashereth is where we have the term Easter from. Easter comes from Ashereth. These are just variations of the words. Alright, go ahead.
And stamped it small to powder.
He made it into powder.
And cast the powder thereof upon the graves of the children of the people.
He cast it upon the same ones who set up this foolishness. This is the fire. It's going to be on your graves. In other words, you guys are going to pay for this judgment on you all. Okay? Jeremiah 7,
verses 8 to 10. Behold, ye trust in lying words that cannot profit. Will ye steal, murder, and commit adultery, and swear falsely, and burn incense unto Baal?
You trust in lying words. Who's the one giving the lying words? These guys right over here, called pastors, priests, and so forth, bishops. They're lying to the people. Go ahead.
Will you steal, murder, and commit adultery, and swear falsely, and burn incense unto Baal, and walk after other gods whom ye know not? And come and stand before me.
And come and stand before me.
In this house.
In this house.
Which is called by my name.
Which they call Church of God. Adventist Church. Church of Holiness. This church, that church. They give all these titles. Jehovah, this, that, you name it. But they're doing things that is lying words. And doing things contrary to what is written in the Word. Go ahead.
And say, we are delivered to do all these about
That's
you.
why they have revivals. We are delivered. And the preachers preaches wonderful messages. And all this foolishness goes on in there. But it's not of the Lord.
Is this house which is called by my name become a den of robbers in your eyes? Behold, even I have seen it, saith the Lord.
All right. But you can see clearly, brothers and sisters, something is wrong. Something is wrong with the water that we've been drinking from. The stream is polluted.